Maurice. Okay. So, oh, is it on? Yes. Oh, okay. So these video recordings you can hear on the IAM Books YouTube channel, and then eventually we take them and we put them on the Italian American Writers Association Facebook site as well. I'm sorry, I had your bios open and now they're closed. So we're so pleased to have Marie and Danielle here. As Jen said, they traveled far to get here, Western Mass and Connecticut. So thank you. And in February, they're quite risk takers. But Marie Gauthier is reading first, and she's the author of Leave No Wake, Pine Grove Press 2022. It's very beautiful, sitting right there by the cookies. And the chapbook Hunger All Inside from Finishing Line Press 2009. Her poems have appeared in Poetry Northwest, Sugar House Review, The West Review, Mom Egg Review, and elsewhere. She works for Pioneer Valley Books, a publisher of literacy resources, and serves as co-president of the League of Women Voters of Massachusetts. Vote! So it's our pleasure to have Marie read for us tonight.
Yeah.
Thank you. I'm a little tall. I speak very close to it. So I just want to thank so much Jen and Julia and IAM Books and Gina for having me here, and the Italian American Writers Association. This is really great. I was saying to Lance and to Danielle, thank you, Danielle, for being here too. That I grew up in Brockton, which is south of Boston. We never really came up to North Boston. So this might be, I've been to Faneuil Hall, but I've very, very little. This is, this is fancy for us. And it's really like amazing to be surrounded by so many Italian restaurants. So I'm going to start off with some poems from my book, Leave No Wake, which covers, I'm sorry, okay. Thank you. Which covers a lot of ground, from motherhood to death of mothers to further on in life. Death to life. When winter ended, the bushes hung so brown and forlorn, I thought we'd failed them. More deaths to tally in the ledgers of moral responsibility. The missing panicles of the sumac trees, more oracles than Heracles. The cat that faded in days, more Cheshire than Calico. The carelessness of all four parents lost. But when a friend mentioned hers hadn't flowered for the first spring in memory, I began seeing them everywhere. Leaves of burlap, where there should have been green stars, supernova with blooms. We found the right person with the right information at the dump, where our distant neighbor and master gardener told us wind killed the rhododendrons, record winds, and climate change. More human nature than Mother Nature. We could have spun that thought to further conclusions, the acres of death, imagined all the winters to come, but the vast incapacitates. So we turned instead with the relief of letting go, the relief of being blameless, or helpless, or hapless, to our neighbor's advice. Look for signs of life, and brook no weakness. Cut it down to the ground. I'm about to read a few poems about my mother. But I won't dwell there. Spring crocuses. Winter is the mother, chiseled underground. Acres of graves buried by snow. Cancer beveled her to bone. 2 steps were too much by the end. I lifted her onto the borrowed bed, cupped her head, its tamarisk wisps of white. Her mottled hands clawed at the blanket. 40 years in the north, and still she couldn't abide the cold. She sighed a smile, settling in. I thought then she'd see the spring. Do all the dying sneak out just ahead of the sun? The crocuses poked along days after, late stars of the lengthening light, useless. Motherless. A quiet, nothing like peace. Only the subtraction of sound. Breath, heartbeat, oxygen machine. Everything stilled to this, the sound of sobs in a vacuum. Her mouth yawns, an airless maw. Tongue slumped to one side, like a closed pink tulip. I lift her jaw and prop it with a pillow. Prop the pillow with her dough warm hands. The pantomime of devotion they will inevitably disturb. Before the body bag, before the gurney, the hospice nurse and I performed the ablutions, dressed my mother in clean, soft cotton. We 6, her children, groaned, crying waves. Each hour brings the loss of her, time emptying its minutes into the room cavernous without the hospital bed, the room where my boys, her youngest friends, spin like lodestones and a haywire compass, unmoored by its vacancy. In the living room, my brothers divvying up their second-hand suits among the family men, each trying on pants and jackets, passing what doesn't fit onto the next. Who has a tie? A tie pin. Shoe polish. Shoes. This is what I like to read for you here because I think it captures a little bit of the sprawling Italian family I grew up in. And we would spend Sundays at the Miles Standish Beach. We'd get up way, way early in the mornings. We'd be there lining with the cars to get in. We wanted to get close because we'd be running in to grab as many tables as we could because we just camped there for the day. My dad was one of the youngest of 8. My aunt had 11 kids. I'm only 6. I'm 43 first cousins. So we were taking over a good quarter of the beach. Summer Sundays. At the lake, aunts, cousins, uncles, spread over 5 picnic tables, some familial play. The sun exhausted, slumps off behind the trees. One last game of bocce ball. One last jump from the abandoned lifeguard's chair. We feel alien in our t-shirts and jeans, our burnt skin and torn nets of wind-snarled hair. Clouds of black flies clot the cooling night. We extend our arms as if we could catch anything and run. We run headlong. I'll read a few more poems. I have just 3, rather than the 6 I grew up in. I'm a sports mom, strangely enough to imagine. Personal best. Mid-April hits hot. The sun drying crusts of salt on the runners' bodies as the track meet edges toward evening. There's no harboring shade, no leaves on the trees. Caregivers line the track in caps beneath umbrellas, clap and call our children's names, then glance at phones after they pass. It's the first meet of the season. We're not yet used to the cadence of contest, how jumping, close to throwing, close to running, the purgatory of in between. We're one in our well wishes for the last racer over the finish line. You got this. Way to go. The air's cooled to 80 by the time the 4x4 starts, the sun behind the hills. The official's gun pops with a puff, and the racers launch. The batons catch the low light as the runners pump their arms and legs around the curve. Their teammates roar, "Go, go, let's go," while their bodies cut through the still hot air. Reaching, reaching, we cry out when one fumbles the handoff, the thud of metal on polymer. The next runner snatches it up, bounds after the lost seconds, the lost ground. Our shouts fill the field, flout the inevitability of time and space, defeat but a temporary stop along the tandems. The air lifts with a breeze as they fly by. So yes, I am co-president of the League of West of Women Voters of Massachusetts and the statewide league, and founding president of our local league of Franklin County, and heading into a busy year. And assuming that all of you good people are registered to vote, we are nonpartisan. And I live in a small town now, not in the large city of Brockton. We live in Western Mass, and of 1,800 people. So we are governed by town meeting there. And, if you all were in Boston, you ship them from other places, but it's very direct. It's not representative town meeting, it's full-on town meeting, one person, one vote. And my son, my oldest just turned 18, so that'll be exciting. We're heading into town meeting season. So, town meeting. To live your life is not as simple as to cross a field. Life involves passion. The school budget and short-term rental lodging tax barely merit debate this year. This full house is for the new marijuana bylaws article. All the voters question and comment till the full flower moon is winking through town hall's high windows. Earlier, running after the rain, I met deer in their spring coats, gold in a green field, a mile from the center of town. The sky at dusk cast a purple glow I meant to bask in for a minute, but noted the deer's white tails flicking their alarm and kept moving. I'm thinking of that light now, and the deer's taut caution. As the motion passes, shortly after 11, and the moderator's gavel marks adjournment, about how quickly the light can go, and how slow we are to see it. I don't know if you've ever been camping and woken up in the middle of the night to wood sounds. It can be a little alarming. Night watch. The owls at 2 a.m. are foghorns blasting from all directions, a territorial round robin of discord. The summer-scented woods feel incendiary, with yellow-eyed guardians at each compass point, in the mossy, muffled stillness, as smaller creatures pause to taste the wind. Is there iron in the air? The kids in their cots sleep so soundly I can't hear them breathe. Take that breathing on faith, as I take so little. I could add flesh to the bones of this ever-latent word, dress it up in feathers, fur, blood diamonds. But why? Under every taut thread, you'll still find dread sucking its own marrow. Even the mouse knows its scritching in the cabin's walls stops dead We listen together to what the owls might teach us about staying alive. Each questing into a dark coral bouquet, a slip stitch of sound closing over us.
You know, what goes a timer?
Oh, that's true. Sorry. There's a timer. I have 2 flash poems that I'd like to close with. The art of aging. About menopause, they are never wrong, the old matriarchs. They know the flush of heat as you burn from the inside out, how no amount of discarding clothes cools its fires. Our colleagues peer over screens, ceramic mugs steaming in their hands, dispensing movie spoilers and cat videos, as if you weren't this minute dissolving like salt in warm vinegar, granular, fragile. How inestimably kind the iron-haired cashier seems with your bananas, while you're invisible to the tattooed young bagger, hands nail-bitten, thickly veined, tossing everything into your cart. She knows there's either murder in your heart or an endless burn and swale of vague wanderings in search of your last true thought. Who knows how blood boils and spatters rather than flows? Knows when the tide crests bloodthirsty. The crones keep mum. And thank you again for all listening. So nice. Spring morning. My daughter tiptoe dances on the deck, singing to the birds. The morning light faint on the boys sipping warm milk. Chickadee-dee-dee. She's missing her 2 front teeth. Her brothers laugh every time she laughs. She loves making them laugh, which makes her and them laugh. The chickadees love her song. They chirp back, flitting from branch to branch. In this way, love repeats from our home to the trees, to the sky, returns to our home, to the trees, to the sky. Something we keep and give away. Thank you.
Oh, thank you so much. Oh, okay, our second feature is Danielle Pieratti. She's the author of the poetry collections Approximate Body, came out from Carnegie Mellon University Press in 2023, and Fugitives from Lost Horse Press 2016. Her translated volume of works by Italian poet Maria Borio is Transparencies, and it's in a beautiful bilingual edition here. So nice if you're practicing your Italian to get bilingual editions. And that was released by World Poetry Books in 2022. Danielle was a 2023 Connecticut Office of the Arts Fellow and currently serves as poetry editor at the International Literary Journal. I should have asked you how to say it. Asymptote, which is a very cool journal, which I looked up. It's fabulous. So congrats. I know you just got on the mountain for that. So please welcome Danielle.
Thanks so much. I was impressed with how you managed your timer. I'm going to try to do the same. Mine too, I think, is going to turn off.
I think you're fine.
So I want to start by thanking Julia and Jen and IAM Books for having us. This is such an amazing event. I want to thank Marie for reading along with me, and all of you who read tonight, and all of you who are here. It's so great to be here. I'm excited. Can you hear me okay? Yeah. I'm gonna start with a excuse me, a poem from my first book. I have some copies of it here, and this one poem is a favorite of mine, and it's kind of a cool poem because it was written in stages, and the oldest line in the poem actually is 20 years old. I grabbed it from another poem and stuck it in this poem, and it's funny how poems happen that way, right? I had no idea when I was in my early 20s that this would end up in my first book. This is called Triptych, and it's got an epigraph from James Wright that some of you might recognize. If I stepped out of my body, I would break into blossom. Between my fingers, the metal staple is precarious. The barb it hugs like a held bug. Hooked, then unhooked, I'm an open sail. I thwart my maker. Somewhere a lamb is bleating. The dried blood on my hand runs freely, touched again by rain, then sleep. River through an oddly common cosmos. Down a wave, flanneled, you unravel a drum of barbed wire against wet drift, clay soil, and rotting leaves, not knowing we are younger than we'll ever be. I want to take a sapling with me, the young beech I seize with copper leaves, forbidden currency, as if either of us would leave here empty. So that book has a lot of rural imagery in it. I wrote most of the poems when I was working on farms in upstate New York. And my second book is very much about becoming a mother and being a mother, and also about caretaking and about the kinds of guilt that come up when you become and you're taking you're responsible for someone else. So not just children, but animals, pets, and by extension, sort of my grief around our responsibility to care for the world, which comes through in the subtext of this book, but it will be in a few of the poems that I'll read tonight. This first one is called Matins, and I wrote it after a trip to Costa Rica. We walk that other country of dry brush and tire-sown roads. Beneath a morning mist of smoke, the hillside deepens from camel to black. I tilt a gate round with yellow flowers on stripped blonde stalks to attend the white tile graveyard laced with trees. Across a field, a yoked team of long-eared cattle nears its home of painted clapboard. Two lines of laundry flag away from the zinc roof like kites. My children crunch a gravel lane to pet the horse they're entitled to love for his hips. I might follow the scrawled cursive of this barbed wire, knowing today that if I've loved anything, it has not been enough. Didn't mean to read two poems back to back. The editor would not be happy about that, but we're in. This is called Woman Planting. Of all things, you would covet more hours of sun for the garden. That vexed forsythia never raised her unkempt, wiry arms, dry and budless through here. You might become this minted swirl of fingers and fence, toil and soil-soaked palm. Instead, slim penance for killing off bees, dreams of plastic owls, save your bats. This morning finds you again on your knees, hanging crystals, alarms, planting catmint you paid for, this noon you favor unruly and benign. Wasn't it you who just yesterday set a sparrow's nest among roses, then waited behind glass for its keeper's safe return, failing to learn from gardens, birds not to touch what isn't yours to touch? Later, you photographed their bodies, thinking they would live, that you might watch. I'm going to read a few sections of this poem that I actually almost never read, but it's not, it's unlike the other poems in this collection because it's more from my childhood, which I spent part of in Italy, actually. I lived in Rome from when I was 9 to 15. My father was a diplomat. And my father was also Italian American, very connected to his family in Italy, and he died when I was 18. And so this poem is an elegy around sort of loss of place, loss of person, loss of language, all of those things that sort of come up around thinking about this topic. It's called Elegy with Pine Nuts in Its Mouth. And if you've ever been to Rome, and I think in other parts of Italy, I'm sure, actually, I know in other parts of Italy this is the same. The pine nuts that are very expensive to buy in the supermarket here, you can actually gather along roadsides by the handful. And this was a very, very common experience for me as a child. They have this sort of powdery brown powder on them that gets all over your fingers from the shell. And so this is Elegy with Pine Nuts in Its Mouth. I'll just read a few sections. In my mouth, the words are first a gag, a memory of fur. Then echo of bird song arriving through old growth. Is that you, TH? And where else have you been? Dialect I might have earned. You words called hatchets, driven and well sprung, tapped, you sap, you languid, ungrieving daughters. The way to lose him wrongly. Remember his dismissal like the mean dart meant for you it was. In its 36 months, the cone of the stone pine matures at 6 inches long. Aged and finally dry, it flays open and 2 firm oblong seeds loosen from under each woody leaf with shells streaked powdery brown. These a child can easily shape or pick out with her fingers or gather from piles along roadsides and break open with a small flat rock and eat. Sometimes the seed yields deeper gold and translucent and visibly sour. And sometimes she wields the rock too hard, learns a vexing lesson in restraint. Manifesto and 10 synonyms for nature. My school skirt after recess inked brown with my fingertips. I remember the catacombs of Priscilla. I remember most of all, I remember the tiny guide in her gray habit, her skin like gold marble, her eyes always lowered, her smile but for the grace of God and the echo of her slow liquid voice in 8 languages through tunnels for miles, how it was the kind of voice I wanted to chew on and how her gentle wand, tapping the image of Jesus in the first ever portrait of the Virgin Mary, made a sound like the perfect give of chalk on a sidewalk, and oh, how I longed to hold it. What had I to learn from women bound to rapture by their gods? How to own my death as I turn into a tree to escape. I'm going to read the last one of 2 more that I'll read from this book. I'm going to read this partly because we were talking about snow this morning, and it snowed at my house this morning, and snow comes up a lot in this book because it's become sort of a symbol of ecological grief for me. I don't know if others feel grief about the fact that we have less and less snow every year. But for me, it's sort of a symbol of obviously all of these changes, climate change, etc. This poem is about an experience that I had in my early 20s when I got on a snowmobile with someone I didn't know after dark for some reason in upstate New York, in a remote town of upstate New York. And he took me out into the middle of a field where he got the snowmobile stuck and had to leave me in order to get it started again, which was actually a pretty transcendent experience. So this is called A Memory of Snow. Off-road, half drunk, Knee deep in ermine, he doubled over, took his fill of liquid heaves, stalls, and kickstarts, laid him down in towny white, his fail a leaden night, then left me in the gully by the tree line. First his flare spilled over the hill, then his sound, till unfound I stood alone by the oil spot the engine left. Above, around, a sonogram of stars, that quiet, moony otherworld of clotted, almost light. Again, meeting it against me, I stand tonight at the dark window in this winter of dwindling snow, where snow, like an undue drift, returns dampered the bent row, her body still and human. So we got 6 hens last summer at my house. And they actually just started laying about a month and a half ago, which is a victory. But it's not my first experience with hens. We actually rented hens a few years ago. I don't know if you knew that you can do that, but you can. So this is rubric for burying a hen. 1. Your instinct for concern is developing, but backwards. Either farm work or parenthood has diminished your animal empathy, though some maternal haunting may nudge your score into the proficient range. Noting lethargy, diarrhea, her growing tolerance for handling, you fail to act quickly / need improvement. Later, you try to forget / make a joke of / intend to omit how your daughter may have cocked her on the head with a roost ramp. 2. Your disturbance reflex is proficient. You startle when only 2 hens drop from the hatch by mid-morning. Then, opening the roost, you note the head like a carved swan's, recoil at the thought of her choosing this corner to die alone. Additionally, you may leave the body undisturbed, not knowing why you raise the ramp so the others won't discern her. 3. Your appetite for grief barely approaches standard. When little pressed, you offer flatly to the children that she died. You may wait until afternoon to retrieve the body, noting tenderly the still supple neck, not bearing to touch the belly with its toxic egg, then bag and hang it from a nail in the garage. 4. Your observance of ritual earns 3 half stars. To yourself and the fox, you deny the grace of offering. Though predictably, your aesthetic demonstrates an expert's preference for rehearsed distraction. You may first walk gingerly to the creek, leaning on your shovel, looking half-heartedly for the tree carved this year with the names of your 2 cats. After the funeral, perhaps you sit for minutes on a bench you made by hand, so convinced are you of your belonging. So I'm going to read 2 more poems. These are new poems. And I thought they would be fun to read because my new manuscript, one I'm working on right now, is based on Dante's Purgatorio. And it takes language from multiple translations of Purgatorio and sort of recycles them into new poems. I started this manuscript in late 2022, shortly after my son, who's now 14, was diagnosed with leukemia. He's doing great. But it's a kind of backstory that you need for the poems. I'm going to read, I didn't know if I'd have time, but I'm going to read the introduction, and then I'll read 2 poems. The first is from Canto 2, and another one from Canto 5. This is the intro. The poems here borrow language from the more than 80 English translations of Dante Alighieri's Purgatorio. I have tried to indicate where my authorship begins and ends. Where I've failed, I have sometimes done so intentionally, which is to say, a few days after our son was diagnosed with acute lymphoblastic leukemia, a child life specialist sat down with our 8-year-old daughter to make blood in a bag. They used Caro syrup for platelets, red hot candies for red blood cells, mini marshmallows for white blood cells, and licorice candies for abnormal lymphocytes, which is to say, B cells mistranslated. What fresh purgatory is this? Said no one ever. Purgatory, if I know, said no one ever. Canto 2, 5 a.m. sounds on the 8th floor. It's true, we are strangers here, wandering the shore. And yet, desert night's hands are merciful. The room sings as with one voice in the dark. I hear the highway's wind, a rumor of women, this sweetness, sound of boy breath, my own a light wave lapping at my mask, and the nuisance clicks and trills of the infuser as your IV bags poison waters mixed with salt. You wait, hiccuping, then heard your pull towards the bathroom. Will have no other sail for this than your own wings, and use no oar. Sometimes an angel appears, genuflecting at the gel dispenser, fast fixed in mute attention, murmuring, of course. The bathroom light clicks on, casts its incisive arrow. The door closes, the waning shaft, another whiteness, non-russet. I hear you pee into the plastic urinal. There is no figuring that sound. And this is the last one I'll read, and it's from Canto 5, which is a favorite of mine. It has a lot of water in it. It has storms, violent deaths by water, but it is also one of the places where Dante mentions the Arno River, which is the river that runs through Florence, the river next to which he says he was born, and the river that my father was named after. His name is Arno. Canto 5, at the ferry crossing. Through the windshield, through the space between trees, the river and its mattering, slow oval of flotsam floating offshore. I have come here fleeing you. Remember now a storm through which we flung your elders' ashes and sound, its skies wide wound of full soaked air, and we, one family in one little boat, fittingly adrift. I think you must have left the world to know returning to the world, how the heart brags, I am. I think, what else kills death but form? Your great-grandmother was a painter. I still see her in her swim cap, treading slowly on her side, one ear to the surface. Across the park, a low sun curls the backs of insect wings and leaves the sulfur green of early spring. How it started. Through a storm, we tossed their ashes back to water, like one river enters another and loses its name. How it really started, with the glacial lake that scored this valley, the keyboard letters I thought you'd quieted forever with putty. So sorry, you said, of the light which was broken, though it was not broken. Thank you so much.
Those two brilliant readings. Thank you so much. Another round of applause. There are books for sale, there are cookies to eat, and there are readings to come to. March 16th, we have Chloe Elena Miller and Kathy Curto. They're both Italian American Writers Association board members and wonderful writers. That's March 16th. April 20th, we have Joey Nicoletti and Lo Galluccio. And May 18th, We have Linda Lamenza and Sal Pane, and I think Sal's book is right there. Anyway, so hope you'll check that out. And if you haven't joined Iowa and you'd like to learn more about it, please ask me and Jen. And there's forms over there if you want to join. Okay, thank you. Good night.
Thanks.